with in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, which is displayed on this page. And it's the strategy to achieve Pan-Africanism. And you should read it. You should ask us if you want information like, well, what is your strategy? What work does the APRP do to achieve Pan-Africanism? Because if you don't know, if you can't give examples of what we do, then stop talking about it because you don't know what you're talking about. All you're doing is spreading confusion. Stop talking about it. You know, I talked to someone the other day, and they're like, well, what does the APRP do? Before I can answer, they start telling me because I don't think that I'm like, no, you should have just stopped with the question. Because I don't, you know, at the age I'm at now, I don't want to waste time. I don't know how much time I have, and I'm not afraid of death. Unfortunately, I've had to face that prospect multiple times in my life. So I'm not afraid of it. I recognize that it's a part of life and that we all are going to die physically from our physical bodies. So, you know, I don't have any issues around that. But what time I have, I want to make it productive, and I don't want to waste time listening to a lot of nonsense. So, you know, people will notice, like I will cut you off and like, what do you got? What are you talking about? What are you going to say? Like, I don't want to go like, you know, if you have all this much going on in your head and you have to talk it all out to understand what the hell is in your head, then you do that work on your own. I don't want to do that with you. You do that. I've done that for myself so that I don't waste your time. So you need to do that work. So I don't want to hear all that. You know, that's a waste of my time. And I want to use what time I have to be productive. So if you don't know what strategy is, then study it. And you could start with the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. And if you don't want to do that, then don't waste our time. You know, we want to talk to people who want to understand our mission. And if you don't want to do that, then that's fine. You go do whatever the hell you want to do. And our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by AAPRP organizers, myself, Ajamu, and Shakura, my biological, ideological daughter. Both of us, of course, are active within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So to get us started, I'll turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you. Greetings, everyone. I echo what Comrade Ajamu said. Definitely hoping that you all are maintaining your best spiritual, physical, mental, ideological capacities as best you can. It's important to stay protected from the propaganda. It's important to stay vigilant, aware. You know, I was talking to my dad, I think this was about a couple of weeks ago, and I was just talking to him about how I'm really trying to challenge my workouts. I'm trying to, you know, train my body to, you know, have some new sensations instead of just doing my typical routines and, you know, rituals that I do when I work out. And, you know, I was telling him, like, man, I really want to, you know, be able to do this and do that so that I can, you know, be healthy and live a long life, hopefully. And he was like, yeah, of course. But also, like, you know, you should think about how when you work out, like the whole purpose of that is so that you can, you know, have a healthy body and not have ailments or illnesses, at least not prematurely, right? But also, you should be, you know, training your body to be in physical fitness and to be in shape because you may need to rely on that to save your life one day. And I never thought about it quite like that. But as soon as he said that, I thought about, you know, potentially running if a police officer made me feel unsafe for my life. I thought about potentially running because I live in a red state if someone is unhappy with the election results just in just a couple of months, right? Or a month and a couple of weeks at this point. I thought about potentially being kidnapped because non-male people disappear all the time, especially African non-male people, and no one says a word about it, right? And so I guess I'm just sharing that with you all because it's important for us to be always thinking about ways that when we are oppressed, we have a responsibility to ensure our own safety. No one else is going to prioritize that. No one else is going to value that. People are not even going to see that our safety is in danger. They're not even going to see it as an opportunity that needs to be talked about, that needs to be evaluated, that needs to be looked at. No one is going to think of those things. And so I literally think about if I'm on the ground and someone is standing over me, how fast can I roll over and hop back up and knock them off their balance or whatever I can do to do that? And so, we should all be continuing to challenge ourselves in different ways, making sure that we have resources available, thinking through things and prioritizing what we are anticipating the enemy to want to do, because we know that people exist out there to harm us, and we should have every intention of bringing that harm back to them, or at least finding a way to protect ourselves so that we can get away from a dangerous situation. And I think that that naturally segues great into this topic, because it's important to think about how the people that we have been socialized to believe are going to protect us are very subjective to who they decide they want to protect, right? And who the system, I should say, decides that they should protect, right? And so if you are not aligning with the system's priority, then you're not going to be included in that. And you just need to accept and understand that, right? So, we can really break this down by thinking about this International Day of recognizing police terrorism, even brutality, like however you break that down, violence, harm, whatever word you want to use for recognizing police terrorism in that regard. It originated and really had its kind of organizational roots, if you will, that were established in Europe and in Canada in the 1990s. Now, a group of young folks came together, and they had various groups of young folks that collectively came together, and they decided, we want to oppose the ill treatment, the bad treatment, the dehumanization of what people are receiving when they interact with police officers. We want to oppose that. We want to oppose the mistreatment of police, especially when it comes to marginalized communities. And because of that, today we can think about this effort of police terrorism and how it exists all over the planet. I also want to note that we can also think about where the background of how police came to be established, how that came to be, right? And so without taking too much away from what Comrade Ajamu was going to speak to, I do think that we should do our research in terms of really studying how police came to be. So whether you're researching slave militias, whether you're researching overseers, whether you're researching sheriffs, whether you're researching sheriffs who were also Klans members, who also manifested and migrated into becoming police officers, whatever that looks like, I strongly suggest people do their research. It is so, so important. It's so important because if you understand how these folks came to be and the powerful positions they're in, then you have a better understanding of knowing why they were created. You have a better understanding of knowing what their intentions were then versus what they are now, and how they have progressed, how they have grown. And most importantly, I think we can learn from our ancestors who were running away from police officers then too. We can learn from them on maybe some strategies that we have not yet incorporated. We can learn from them and grow from them, and maybe even ensure more safety, because I'm sure that they've come up against some circumstances that we can only imagine. And we have so much to learn when it comes to really bringing in that information so that we can, like I said, ensure safety for ourselves. We already know that propaganda will teach us the opposite. Propaganda will teach us that we can rely on them, that we can expect them to provide us comfort and security, that we can rely on them to help us when we're facing threats and dangerous situations. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. And I think if we really think about the social construction of what police mean to colonized people, what police mean to non-male people, when we think through what that really looks like for a lot of us who are honest about that conversation, police do not provide us comfort and safety. And that's just basic psychology. You can literally look up studies about colonized people who have seen a police officer pull into their lane. And even though they're not even being pulled over, they will put a blood pressure cuff on the driver who is colonized, and they will monitor how the heart rate will increase because the driver sees a police officer behind them. I've never participated in that study, but my heart rate definitely increases when I see them get behind me. And then I've started to play a game to see How long are you going to be behind me before you make up a reason to pull me over? So this is like, we have to really dig into that, you all. We have to dig into that, and we have to really start to look at it like we should really be organizing ourselves differently, where the social response should not be to call on the same people who are causing terror and threat to us. The social response should be for us to collectively figure out a way to deal with our own issues, our own terrors and threats, because we stand a better chance of relying on one another, even if that means we have to repair broken men. As Frederick Douglass said, it's so much easier to repair broken children than to repair broken men. But even if we had to rely on fixing one another in terms of the people we rely on, we would still stand a better chance of doing that from a community standpoint than we would trying to change an entire system of police officers who thrive and benefit off of privilege, power, and production. You want to talk about an alliteration? There you go, right? So we have to really start to unpack that, you all. And that's why, to me, it is ludicrous for us to experience these kind of issues and inequities and then to call them expecting for change to come. And don't, think low about it. Like, put it all into a category of where it's all supposed to be. I was working yesterday on my couch and my blinds were open and I could see, people walking by. I can also hear my doorbell chime going off when the motion is activated. And I see the security people for my complex walking by. And I'm like, what are they doing? And what do they want? Like, that's my immediate response. And that's a good response to have, because they're not making me feel safe. They clearly don't care about their jobs that much. And sure, we can make the argument, well, how much are they making? And are they being paid a livable wage? Sure, we can make that argument. But even beyond that argument, what they represent is basically another police officer, even though they don't have the same skill set, even they don't have the same monetary pay, none of that. But that's what they represent to me, which means they are wasting my time and I can't rely on them. And I know I can't rely on them because they have not shown me that they value me as a person. And I think those are the kind of set conversations that we need to have, you all. Like, for real, those are the conversations that we need to have. We also should be doing more investigative research on this International Day of recognizing police terror. How many people are you going to talk about this seminar to after this seminar is over today? Was this something you already knew about before this seminar? How many people do you know that also knew about police terrorism and it being an international day? These are the kind of conversations that we need to have, because having these kind of conversations allows us to start to really frame what political education we are missing. That way we can really try to fill in those gaps and do more research, such as understanding how police came to be, as I said before. And then also it helps us to understand that we can start to enforce more people to know about international police terrorism, especially if that's not a entity or an institution that people are already aware of. It's our responsibility to educate them. It's our responsibility to help share that information with them so that they can start to think more about how that day might mean something to them and what they might want to do to celebrate that. And then we can even think about how this is an opportunity for us to think even about the acronym of FTP and what that means to us, and then also just kind of digging more into what all of this means in the grand scheme of capitalism, in terms of propaganda, in terms of pushing a certain framed agenda, that police are your friends, as Comrade Ajamu said, that police are people you can rely on. And instead, us digging a little bit deeper into looking at the facts, just looking at just basic logic in terms of the statistics of how many times police have not shown you that they value or care for you. And they probably didn't make you feel like they valued and cared for you. And again, like, taking on this suspicious attitude that I had when I saw the security, I think that's going to be more necessary, because maybe 20 minutes after the security left, two police officers walked by and I was like, okay, something is going on, but it's not for me to be putting my nose out into. But I also need to be vigilant. I need to be aware. I need to make sure that I have stuff in place in case something goes down. So I think those are the kind of things that we need to look more into, and take a chance and risk having more conversations like this. Next slide, please. People might not like you if you talk about international police terrorism, but people might not like you because you believe that police are good people. So, the question will become like, how do you find a way to maintain your integrity? How do you find a way to maintain what your arguments are in terms of what it is you're trying to get across? And, we say this all the time. You all shouldn't make the decisions that you make in your life because we're telling you to make them. You shouldn't even make the decisions that you make in your life because the organization you belong to is telling you to make those decisions. You should make those decisions because that's what you believe in, and you collectively can come together with other people and find the same accordance of other people also agreeing with you. Everything that you do and decide to do, you should know why you're doing it. No one else should be able to tell you what to do. You should be able to think for yourself and make those decisions. And so that's all we're asking, is for you to take this in the same grain of salt that you would all the other seminars that we've presented to you so far. You don't have to take our word for it. You can do your own research, because that's what we've done today. And that's what we intend to share with you to support our argument about why we shouldn't be trusting in them and why we should honor this International Day of Terrorism. And so, just continuing to kind of pull this in a little bit more, we understand that there are millions of people tuning into social media, and there are videos galore where you can see what is happening in the world. You can see biased videos, you can see unbiased videos, you can see videos locally in the area that you're in, you can see international videos, you can see national videos not so close to where you live. There's so many opportunities for people to show you that they have become aware of police terrorism when it comes to colonized communities being victim of that, right? And we can also think about how there's a very gigantic phenomenon that basically covers the rest of the world in terms of us understanding how colonized people have been under attack, even in other parts of the world. I had this same conversation with a friend of mine the other day, and not only did I ask her to kind of think about, how police came to be, but I also asked her to think about, where police get their training. And again, not trying to tap too much onto Comrade Jamu's slides, but these are the kind of things that we have to research, you all, because these are the kind of conversations that could potentially save our lives one day. They could save someone else's life if we're having these conversations. And so we know that this is a global thing. We also know that even within the last 5 years, we have seen some urban rebellions against police terrorism, especially with African people fighting back, African people resisting, African people not accepting that the terrorism is just there for them to take in. We've seen examples of this in Lagos, Nigeria. There's been other cities in the US and even Toronto, Canada, in Germany. We could think about some examples in Paris, France, and even in Melbourne. And so, like, just thinking more about this, we can think about some of our panelists from African Liberation Day. We could think about panelists from Pan African Women's Day. They've all been talking about police terrorism. It has not left the cards in terms of what is up against us, what is stacked against us, and what we need to be aware of as colonized people. And so it's really going to boil down to what we have access to in terms of information, and then also, what are we willing to do about it? A lot of times, we will say, so now that you have this information, how are you planning to make a difference? Because we all have a responsibility, you all. We can't just rely on people in power to make a difference. And we certainly can't just rely on voting as an option to fix the problem, because voting is not going to fix it. You see that happening regardless of who is in office, whether it is a Democratic office or whether it's a Republican office. This is going to continue to be a problem. Colonized people are going to continue to be gunned down. They're going to continue to be victimized. They're going to continue to be brutally threatened against and have violence brought to them. We're still seeing examples of that with our Asian descent comrades, because some people are still ignorant and thinking that Asian descent people are the reason for COVID. Like, but again, like, that's the propaganda though, right? That's the propaganda. So we have a huge responsibility on our hands, you all. Huge responsibility. Not only do we get to sit and listen to this seminar and take in this information, but again, what are you going to do about it now that you're informed? As I said before, how are you going to share this information with somebody else? How are you going to bring this up to your children? You might have to change some words around because you may not want to scare your children depending on how old they are. But what conversations are you going to have with them? How are you preparing them for this? What kind of conversations are you having with them so that hopefully they never have to encounter it? But if they do, how would you prepare them? What kind of questions would you have them ask? What kind of and behaviors would you have them display? This is where all of that is going to come from, and it would help if we looked at our ancestors in terms of what they have taught us. And the best way to do that, what I'm going to say, is by increasing our political education. And ultimately, the best way to do that so that we can share these ideas with other like-minded folks is to join an organization that's working for justice. It might not even be the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Any mass independent organization will do. Any mass independent organization. We don't want you to join an organization that receives profit outside of the members, because the problem with that is now that organization will push their agenda on you, which means it may not fully represent that of the members, but because they're being funded by that entity, they have no choice but to follow through. So that's not what we're asking you to join. We want you to join an organization that is mass independent, because that organization is only funded by the members who believe in the aim and the value and the morals of that organization, and they are willing to do anything they can to fight to change the conditions and make them better for other people. That's what we're asking you to join, because we know that then you'll be able to join an organization that is truly representative of us fixing the problem instead of contributing more to it, and instead of lying and pretending like no problem exists. Because there are some people out there who believe that police are just doing their job. So again, like, how do we deal with those narratives, right? How do we deal with that rhetoric? How do we deal with shutting it down and not even engaging with it, or at least providing evidence-based research that supports the other notion that we're trying to push, right? These are the things that we have to think about. And it's going to require us to be uncomfortable. How many of us are willing to risk that? Those are the questions that we have to ask you all. Ashe.
Ashe, obrigada, asante sana, midasi. Thank you very much. And I think we just want to get into our piece by, as soon as we can get the computer to work, there's always something here, by just talking about debunking a lot of these myths. There's so many myths about police terrorism or police as an institution that we have to start by addressing that and really trying to take down some of these false narratives about policing. And I'm not going to talk about the history of policing. Like, if you don't know it, again, you gotta do your research. You gotta do your work. The big problem is that these types of questions cannot be answered just by quick Google searches. Like, that's a superficial form of research. You have to understand the complexities of this type of analysis. It will require you to spend time looking at contrasting narratives and comparing them and doing writing things down and seeing what makes sense and figuring it out. It takes time and effort to do the type of research that we're talking about. So our objective is to just hopefully try to help people see the necessity to do that work. You can't expect us to do it in 1 hour for you. You can't expect to just Google something on your phone and understand it. If you're not doing this work, then you don't understand it, plain and simple. But we're gonna do our best to inspire folks to hopefully want to understand it, right? So we start with this concept that police terrorism, or they call it brutality, but we call it what it is, terrorism, is simply the result of a few bad apples. So in other words, and we got to say first, again, we got to remind people, police terrorism is international. It's not just in one country. It's not just in the United Snakes cesspool. It's all over Africa. It's all over Europe. It's all over the Americas. It's all over Asia. It's everywhere, right? So police terrorism is only the result of a few bad apples. In other words, this backward ass logic suggests that it's just a question of a few police who are bad. It's not all of them. It's not your brother or your sister or your spouse or your partner or your mama or your daddy that's on these police forces. It's not them. It's somebody else. And that is the logic that's used. And that's a false narrative. That's not true. And we'll explain why it's not true. It's like yesterday with some friends. We have a group of friends, my wife and I, and we go camping with them. It's a little group. We go out and we camp out. And we went to this town close to where we were camping called Sutter's Creek here in Northern California. It's up in the foothills, really, one of these kind of quaint little towns where they have shops and all this stuff. Um, and they wanted to go there and check out some of the shops. And while we got there, as soon as we got there, there was like 100-car pro-Trump caravan that came through the town. No big deal to me. I've seen plenty of them. But for most of the people in our group, they hadn't seen that before. It was really shocking. And then people even in the town, it was really shocking to see. And some of these cars had, all of them had pro-Trump paraphernalia. Some of them had Confederate flags. And so, people were saying on the street, discussions broke out. And there was a group of people, and people were saying, well, at least it was only a couple of them that had Confederate flags, because there's one European woman that owned a store in the town. And as we were passing, she came out of her store and she was yelling, Nazis, go out, get away from here, Nazis. And people were saying, well, she was out of line because there was only one or two Confederate flags. And I said, no, she wasn't out of line. She was 100% correct. Well, how could you say that? I said, because if I was organizing a march for justice for humanity, and I told everybody, like, this is a march for humanity, and somebody came to that march and they had a banner that said, well, LGBTQ people are not human, and I allowed them to march in the march, then I don't have a march for humanity at that point. I don't have anything close to that. If I wanted to maintain the integrity of that march, I would have to tell that person or those people, you can't march here with that banner, which is exactly what I would do in real life. Because that's the only way I can maintain the integrity of claiming this is for humanity. So as long as even if there was just one person with a Confederate flag, by them being allowed to participate in that caravan, what that meant is that the people in that caravan pretty much accepted them existing there, because really, fundamentally, underneath all that bullshit, that's what all of that is really about. Racist, Confederate era values and wanting to return. That's what these people mean when they say, make America great. Go back to slavery, go back to slaughtering indigenous people, women doing nothing but bearing children. That's what they're talking about. If you don't understand that, you're just out of your damn mind. That's just all there is to it. But some of us are not confused like that. Well, it's the same with police. Where are the police organizations that are police officers against police terrorism? Where are these organizations that are standing up and denouncing these people who commit these acts of terror against marginalized community? Where are those police at? Where is your mama and daddy that's police that's doing that on an organized level? Where is your spouse and partner that's the police that's doing? They're not anywhere. None of them are doing that. In fact, when they shoot one of us down like a dog, we go with them. What was the African's name that was running? I can't remember. Walter Scott that was running. Walter Scott, and they shot him in the back and killed him somewhere back east. And it was the Negro cop that got with the European terrorist and said, let's go to a restaurant and get your story straight. So we don't want to hear none of that damn nonsense about, well, there's only a few bad apples. As long as there's no strong effort to stop this terrorism from happening, then your uncle, your daddy, your mama, your lover, whoever the hell it is, they're a part of this terrorist police network, and they're no less guilty than the ones squeezing the trigger. We're not going for that damn sentimental bullshit. They're as much responsible as anyone else. And then the other myth, why are we only concerned about police shootings and not shootings taking place within the African communities? Anyone who says that, and there are tons of these puppet Negroes making that same tired ass point on social media all the time. Like people, they're sharp rocks rattling between their ears. and it's supposed to pass as intellectualism. But some of us are not confused by that stupidity, because if you do any work among the African masses, if you do any work among the indigenous masses, among Asian people, LGBTQ, women, even among working class European communities, if you do any work at all, then you know that all of these communities do constant work to stop violence in our communities. We know where the violence came from. We haven't produced a single ship that could ship drugs into this country. We don't even, as the late Khalid Muhammad said, we don't even own a canoe. We don't have any idea how to make gunpowder into bullets. We don't know how to manufacture guns. We're not the ones producing these weapons. This is a much bigger problem than African people shooting each other in Chicago, Illinois, shooting each other in Freetown, Sierra Leone. We're not going for that bullshit, you all. We know it's much deeper than that. And we know that because we do the work amongst our people. So because we do the work, we know that these prisons in all these countries are filled with African people, are filled with indigenous people who shoot each other. They're filled with them. Right now, as I'm speaking, there are hundreds of thousands of Africans who will go to prison for shooting another African. That is happening. They don't need any help from us in making that happen. That's not even the issue when we talk about police terrorism. That's a subterfuge to keep people confused about what the real issue is. The real issue is that when police slaughter our people down, there's no consequences. None of them are going to prison. Only you can count on one hand the number of them that have gone to prison. That's the issue. That's why people protest. If police were punished for shooting our people down in the street, there wouldn't be any reason for people to be protesting anywhere on earth. So you just have to be a damn fool if you don't understand that. Another myth: police exist to protect and serve. All you have to do is study the history. There's a book, Enemies of the State. I'm sorry, I cannot remember the name of the book, but there are a number of books right now that talk about the origins of police. And we've done workshops on it. You do the work. We're not gonna, you can't just sit up and be a dumb sponge and expect everybody to do your work for you. You got to do the work, find out where police come from. We will tell you that if it were not for slavery in this particular country, if it were not for wanting to harass, intimidate, and terrorize indigenous people in Canada, these police agencies that exist just in these two countries as examples would not exist if it were not for the need to do those things. So you cannot tell us, again, that police are here to protect us. I don't care how many Negroes are on these police forces. Their job when they join them is to do the will of their masters, not to serve and protect our community. Where is that happening? Where African police are keeping our people safer? Where the hell is that? In fact, in 99.9% of these Negro police, you'd rather have a white cop pull you over than one of these coons. Like Ice Cube said when he was in his right mind 30 years ago, he had a song where he talked to, I say that because he's gone completely sold out. Like Dr. Khalid Muhammad said, Ice Cube melting on us. But back when he had his right mind about him, he had a song where he's talking about the black cops act mean towards us to impress the white ones. And that's absolutely right. So there's no protect and serve. And anybody saying that, again, you're just a fool that has absolute sludge and sewer water flowing between your ears. That's it. And the last myth on this page: you can trust the police. You can trust them. Look, when these people tell you, when they stop you and they tell you anything you say can and will be used against you, they are telling you the truth, you all. And what that actually means is anything you say, we will contort it, twist it, change it, adjust it, do whatever we have to do to make our case against you. That's really what they're saying to you. So you cannot find one person, please bring them to us. I talked to the police and it turned out so much better for me doing that. That's a damn lie. So you are hurting yourself when you talk to these terrorists. No negotiation with terrorists, period. That's what we have to practice. And more debunking, right? More police, African police equals less police terrorism against us. Look, where has that happened? There, in 1965, there were none, or if there were, they were the handful of African police in the city of Los Angeles, here in California, for example. Today, there's plenty of African police in Los Angeles. Has police terrorism against our people gone away? No. Is there anywhere you can point to where Negro police have caused us to have less? That's not how this works. This is insidious. If you're the police, you got to arrest people. You got to give tickets. If you don't give any tickets, if you don't arrest anybody, somebody's going to start asking the question, what the hell are you doing out there? So you got to arrest people. You got to give tickets. So if you're going to do that, everybody wants the path of least resistance. You're going to pick people to give tickets to. You're going to pick people to arrest where there's going to be much less of a challenge against you for doing that. And that's always going to be the African masses, the indigenous masses, poor people. That's always who that's going to be. I don't care who the cop is. That's what they're going to do, because we are much less likely to have quality legal representation and the money to pay for that. You know, we're much less likely to do that than rich white kids. You know, one European said it best, said that the difference, the reason why there's mass incarceration of African people and indigenous people, this is a European that said this, is because in the European communities, there's just as much drugs. He said, I grew up in a rich white suburb. Trust me, there's just as much drugs, if not more. There's just as much guns, if not more. The difference, he said, is that our communities are not targeted. And that's 100% correct. That's 100% correct. So the color of the pigs that are coming, I shouldn't say, I don't want to degrade the farm animal, because I made a friend with a pig at a vegan farm. He was 600 pounds, and people said, we never seen him take to somebody like he's taken to you. And I swear that pig told me, like, don't call the police, pigs, because look at me, I'm a nice person, I'm not doing anything wrong to anybody. And I said, you know what, I feel that, I'm gonna stop using that term. So I'm not gonna call them that. They're not worthy of pigs are wonderful animals. They're not worthy of it, even though I don't eat them, but they're wonderful animals. So I'll say that the Gestapo police, the color of the police, has nothing to do with the terrorism being meted against us. And then another myth, the solution to this is voting. Like Shakur said, voting in the right public officials. Look, we were terrorized by the police. Just using this country as an example, you can use the same example all over the world. We were terrorized by police in 1960 when we had 0 elected officials anywhere in this country on any level, local, county, state, national, we had none. And today we have thousands of these people in these elected positions, and terrorism by the police against our people is not any less than it was in 1960. In fact, I would argue that it's worse. So the argument that if we elect these people into office, that'll help us, I mean, that's not, even if someone has good intentions and they get into these positions, the way that the political structures work in a capitalist system, they're not ever going to be in a position where they're going to be able to enact policy. Even if a politician seriously intended to do that, they would gerrymander his or her ass or their ass out of that district so that they wouldn't have the ability to be elected. They've done that for decades. So clearly that's not the solution. Anyone trying to argue that in 2024, I mean, you just need to seek an insane asylum. I mean, that's insane to suggest that. And then just cooperate and nothing bad will happen to you. If you're just not doing anything wrong, nothing bad will happen to you. And that's so insane. I don't even really know how to, clearly, you got these damn celebrities, basketball players like James Worthy, one of the Showtime Lakers of the 1980s, arrested and terrorized by police. And I don't even know what happened with Tariq Hill, the football receiver, but I'm sure it's the same similar type of thing with all these athletes. There are a number of them that have been brutalized. Some of them have even been able to to win settlements against these police departments. So clearly, I mean, they pull over district attorney. Their sister was a district attorney. She got pulled over by the police. They pull over other police that are African and they brutalize them. So, I mean, just cooperate. Like, hell no. I'm like, you know, if we organize against these terrorists, we stand a better chance on an organized level. I'm not talking about any individual committing any acts of violence. So don't lie. Don't try to create some kind of case so they can shut us down. Don't be a damn fool. What we're saying is if we organize revolution and stop these people from having this system that oppresses us, that to me makes a whole lot more sense, and it'll solve the problem a whole lot faster than sitting here believing if you wear a suit and tie and you just say yes sir, no sir, that'll keep you safe. I mean, that's somebody who's been hiding under sewage for the last 500 years that believes that. And then police only reflect the problems already existing among our people. You know, the first thing about that is another myth that's not on here, but I'll talk about it, is that African people commit 51% of the crimes in this country, using this country as an example. You can use any of them, but 51% of the crimes in this country, while only representing 13% of the overall population. Well, one part of that is true. We are 13% of the population in this country. We do not commit 51. Every population commits crime consummate to its percentage of the population. So African people commit about 13% of the crime in this country. But if you watch these racist videos, if you listen to this racist commentary, you will have a very difficult time believing that, because they're trying to create the analysis that we are the criminal element in this society and across the world. Because if they do that, if something happens to us, we're dehumanized, so no one will care. Even a lot of us will not care because we parrot whatever the master tells us. Most of us parrot it. We don't have an analysis of our own because, again, this is not something you can just Google. You can't just Google what percentage of crime do African people commit, or Black people, whatever you want to call us. What percentage of crime do we commit? You can't just do a simple Google search and get the answer. There are so many ways in which crime is reported that you have to do a deep dumpster dive to understand that. There's reporting of crime, different crime categories. There's demographics for cities. There's all of this data that you have to comb through to come up with the answer. Many of us have done that. That's why we talk so confidently about it. That's why we know you don't know what the hell you're talking about when you say we commit 51% of the crime. That's just a racist right-wing talking point. But a lot of us believe that. Just like we believe if you cooperate, you know, I got the picture there of a late brother Philando Castillo, had the gun permit, did everything that these crackers tell us we're supposed to do, in graham crackers, because I don't want you to say, well, he's anti-white. No, I'm anti-injustice. I can't stand Negroes that land on the side of capitalism. They are my goddamn enemy. So it has nothing to do with what color you are. If you stand with the capitalist system, you're an enemy. And if you stand against it, you're a comrade. Period. Dot. Simple. So a lot of these people, you know, well, he did everything that these crackers and graham crackers said to do, and they still shot him and killed him. And it's not just him. That's not an isolated case. That happens every day. So it's like Kwame Ture said, we have to understand that any analysis made against us without including our enemies is a corrupt analysis. So you can't say, well, African people get arrested and are in prison more because we commit more crime, because you're not including the forces of the enemy, because you don't understand. Either you're paid by the enemy to talk like that, or you're just a dumbass and that's why you talk like that, or it could be a combination of both of those things. But any intelligent person who would do the work to understand it would understand that, well, there are clear reasons why these things happen the way they do. There are clear reasons why they happen. And you can base the analysis on the conditions that people are in, the resources people have available, the opportunities they have, and what's put in front of them, right? Like, even in this television series The Godfather of Harlem, they talk about how the numbers running that, Bumpy Johnson, Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, ran for decades in Harlem. It was they employed more people running numbers than any other industry in Harlem combined. And during those years, our people couldn't go to other communities to get jobs. That was just not a reality for us. So yeah, people are going to commit crime because that's the only way they can earn a damn living. And I would argue today, it's not really a whole lot different from a qualitative and tangible perspective. So this is why including the enemy in the perspective is so very important. And so real solutions to this in 2024, what we're looking at is an international network of imperialist trained police agencies, a lot of them trained by the dirty, filthy state of Israel. And they go into Africa. The picture there, you see it in Sierra Leone, where this cracker is training a bunch of graham crackers on how to repress the people, because imperialism is intensifying its effort to have fascism, a police state, rule all over the world, because people are rising up in righteous indignation against imperialism all over the world. The only place where that's not happening is you coons here in the United Snakes of America cell who are trying to build wealth and be entrepreneurs and integrate yourself into the capitalist system like a good damn slave that you are. That's the only place where resistance. Everywhere else our people are in the world, they're trying to overturn this backward ass system, as they should be, because they have a lot more intelligence. They're not trying to integrate into the system. They realize they have no chance of doing that. But you're here and you have a slight chance of doing it because you're in the belly of the beast and you don't give a damn about the masses of your people. So you're just trying to build wealth and become entrepreneurs, because that way you can get your piece of the capitalist pie, and to hell with everybody else that doesn't get it. And I hope that makes you mad as hell and you faint from it. I hope that's what happens, because that's the best you deserve. That's better than what you deserve for selling out your people that way. That's better than what you deserve. One day, I hope we're in a position to give you exactly what you deserve for selling us out that way. And these people are training us all over the world to go up against our own interests. That's what's happening. And part of that, if you understand politics, it's not just taking action. It's like Kwame Nkrumah said, action without theory is blind, and theory without action is empty. So there's always multiple components to the work that these people are doing against us. And so the first part is the propaganda. Support the police. Develop this analysis that the police are actually the victims. Create this. Even among African people, this exists. Even among indigenous people, this exists. And so once you have that going, then you can create the conditions where these people can go into these areas and begin to engage in terrorist training. Training our people on how to be terrorists against our people all over the planet Earth. That's what you're doing. And these police are training our folks to do one thing, and one thing only: repress any resistance against the capitalist system in all its forms. Imperialist empires, crush resistance. Settler colonies, crush resistance. Neo-colonial societies, crush resistance, because they know that the resistance is, everybody knows that resistance is happening around the world, except you entrepreneur, wealth-building Negroes. You're the only ones that think, oh, I'm going to have my, you're the only ones that believe that. Nobody else in the world, everybody else knows better. All right. So this is what these people are training these people to do against us. And our job is to expose that and to build networks that can break that down. And so while you Negroes are running after Bitcoin and running after these goddamn celebrities and all these filth and sewage, I could have told you about Diddy decades ago. Anybody that's doing work on the ground knows that these people are the scum of the earth. All of them are scum, not all of them, but most of them are scum of the earth. And so this is a surprise to you, and you're interested in it because you don't know a goddamn thing. So this is why we have to wake up and stop acting like we don't have any sense between our ears. The police are not our friends. You will never get us to believe that they are. Period. Dot. We are organizing revolution to throw these goddamn terrorists out of our way once and for all. And so we're glad that you joined us. We know that that's too much for some of you, but that's your problem. You know, grow up, put on some adult clothes and start acting and thinking like an adult. It's time for us to stop all this petty nonsense. And we'll be here next Sunday. And even if we're not here, somebody else will pick up the battle. They can stop us, but they can't stop, like Fred Hampton said, they can stop the revolution. They can kill the revolutionary, but they can't kill the revolution. We are not afraid of these people like many of you all. So join us next week, Sunday, September 29th, same time, same place. We're going to talk about, can a president truly improve your daily life? Does electing a president in a capitalist country really mean that you can expect to pay less in groceries and gasoline, pay less for your living expenses? Does it really mean that? And how does it mean that? So we're going to talk about it. We're going to break that down. Go to the QR code in the upper left-hand corner. We have all of our AAPRP programs. If you want more of this, that's the place to go. Our Forward Ever shop, where you can buy clothes that really reflect revolutionary Pan-African messaging. You should definitely be doing that. Go to hoodcommunist.org, hoodcommunist.org, Revolutionary African blog, very important. Join the AAPRP. Go to AAPRP-intl.org and watch the introductory video and join us, not for the faint of heart, not for the sellouts, not for the people who just want to explain away why you're a coward, but for anybody who's honest and sincere and wants to make a contribution for your people. We invite you to go there. Contribute to the AAPRP. Venmo at A-APRP or PayPal at AAPRP, no dash, do that. Go to Burkina Books, the bottom right QR code, one of our many projects on the ground throughout Africa. That's what we're doing, you all, to build up our capacity to have this revolutionary struggle and win for our people. And please support my book, A Guide for Organized Defense Against White Supremacists, Patriarchal and Fascist Violence. It's only $8 US dollars, unfortunately, $5 on the Kindle version on Amazon. They print for free, so I'm not having that discussion with people. Why do you print on Amazon? Well, do you have a printing press I can use? Can you ship my book all over the world? Well, then shut the hell up. We're trying to build a revolution. You don't have time to deal with nonsense because people don't know what they're talking about. I mean, this is such a waste of time and energy. Shut up. If you don't know something, shut up and learn. And then talk about it once you've done the work. Otherwise, shut the hell up, because all you're doing is using oxygen and wasting valuable time that we don't have. You know, one thing that I told them yesterday, one thing that caravan should tell you is that these people are coming and we want to be prepared. And I use the proceeds of this book to help us get prepared. I know a lot of you aren't prepared to get prepared, but for those that are, we want to try to mitigate the damage. Some of you we can't save because you refuse to be an adult and wake up and face the realities of the real world. So you're on your own. But for those who are willing to recognize the danger, we want to get prepared. So forward ever, backwards never. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Stay strong.